joining us today on this sunny Friday. Got a few things to go over that hopefully will be good for you. But before we jump into that, is there any questions or anything that someone wants to bring up?
Jason, I have a question.
Okay.
And I know maybe Russ said this in video or whatever. I've watched some, but I haven't seen everything. But so like, if you have a property under contract and it's on the MLS, and then once I'm closing at the end of the month, do we have to worry about the commission, or do we just need it? Like, will it all still be under the previous terms?
Yeah, it will be all under the previous terms. You don't have to do
Okay.
any addendums. If it goes under contract before the compensation is removed, then that compensation will stay in place.
Okay. And then same thing on a listing. So if I have a listing that goes up, and I know we're supposed to fill out that form, but I was trying to find it and I didn't see, just so I get to look at it. The one, I don't know, is there something that says you will no longer be required to provide this commission and stuff like that?
Are you talking about the new forms that are coming out?
Oh, I thought Russ had said that he had a form in the templates thing. So that's why that he'd already put in there. And that's what I was looking for, but maybe I was wrong.
No, I did send out an email last week that had kind of just a phrase that I was saying you could just add to you could use on an addendum.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was looking through there. I'm like, I don't see anything. So thank you very much.
Yeah, perfect. Any other questions? Okay, today we are going to cover, I think, a very important topic. It's how you're going to get paid moving forward. This week, we're going to kind of focus on the listing side. I'm going to go through the new listing contract and the two ways that agents are going to get paid from that and how you deal with it. Next week, Russ is going to talk about how buyers get paid and how, when you're a buyer's agent, you can, and the new contracts with that. So I'm going to start off with the new exclusive right to sell. I'm going to share that with you. Okay, you should be able to see the exclusive right to sell. You can see in the middle it says sample. The actual forms will be available on the 4th. So on Sunday night, they're going to upload these to the MLS, so you'll be able to actually use the real forms. So just in a couple days from now, these will be available to you. Russ and I have kind of gone back and forth with whether we move everything over to the exclusive right to sell agreement that's made here on the MLS, or keep our exclusive right to sell. Some of you have been around for a long time, know the reason that we had our exclusive right to sell is there was things in that contract that benefited us as agents that the MLS contract did not have. That has changed now. As you guys probably are aware, Matt and Rob used to be with us. They were really good instigators for adding some of this content that was protecting us. Well, they're also now part of the MLS Forms Committee. So in the last 5 years, they've actually incorporated a lot of the stuff that we had in our contract into the MLS contracts. So when 5 years ago, there was this huge divide of this protects us, this doesn't. So we were really strong on, don't use the MLS exclusive right to sell form, use ours. That gap is starting to shrink. There's still a couple things that ours has that this doesn't have. And we're still kind of looking at the ideas of creating a Century 21 specific one for those items. But we're also leaning towards just using the MLS one because it's now reflecting some of the things that we're dealing with in our market. So this is the exclusive right to sell. This first section, nothing's really changing. Terms of the listing stays the same. Keep in mind, this is one error right here that we see an awful lot, is this is the ending date of the contract. So when you sign the contract today, the ending date is what you put in here. We've seen today's date, the day they sign. So you're taking a 1-day listing. That's not correct. And then as we get towards the end of the year, because these are fillable on the MLS, you can click on dates. And if you just go back to the date and you forget that the year is wrong, we've seen errors where you take an October listing and it expires March of the same year. So it actually was not a listing at all. So just be careful with that. But the biggest change, and the one I think that's concerning most of us right now, is Section 2, brokerage compensation. There's now 3 sections involved instead of just one. So we're just kind of go through this real quick. This first part hasn't changed much. If during the listing period, the company and the seller's agent, seller, any other real estate agent, or anyone else locates a party who is ready, willing, and able to buy, lease, or exchange the property or any part thereof at the listing price and terms stated in the data form, or any other price and terms which the seller may agree in writing, the seller is obligated with and agrees to pay the company the brokerage fee in the amount of, and then they've got a dollar sign here and a percent sign. So in our contract, it says plus and can connect those as well. So you can still put your $295, $495, or whatever you charge here in this first section, and then you can put a percentage here. And then this is off gross acquisition price. So before you used to distinguish between net and gross. Now our contract specifically calling out gross. So if a seller is wanting to only pay off a net, you're going to have to do an addendum to do that, but it's going to come off of the gross acquisition price where that is. So one of the questions that we're getting on this is, in our contract, this number right here is the total amount. That's the seller's commission and the buyer's commission. In this contract, this is the seller's portion for you as a listing agent. This is your portion. So if you're taking a 3% or a 4% listing, you're putting that number here, where before on our contract, you would put the total amount on the top, and then whatever you're giving to the buyer's agent would go lower in the contract. This is the amount that you're collecting as the listing agent in this transaction. This section talks about how you get or when you're going to get paid. That hasn't changed. Anytime the sale happens, it leases, the signing of the lease, option agreement, all of that triggers the fact that they're going to need to pay you. That doesn't change from where it is. Section 2.2 is changed. This is where if your client, if you're representing the seller, if your client is going to offer a compensation and they want it to be marketed as compensation. Now, one thing to make sure we're clear on is that the compensation can be marketed, just not on the MLS. So we can tell people that, hey, we're going to pay this. We just can't use the MLS as the source of communication. We have to use another source to communicate that we are offering that compensation. So the company is authorized to advertise or to otherwise communicate that the seller and or the company is offering to pay compensation to a buyer's brokerage in the amount to, and then you either check a dollar amount or you check this one, which is a percent. And this also is the gross acquisition price. So the brokerage
Hey,
fee,
Jason,
yes, go ahead.
can I ask a question with regards to that? Just making sure that we are okay going forward in talking about commissions, because I know it's always been touchy in the past. Is that something that as a buyer's agent, we can call up when our buyers are going through? Because we need to know if they, if we have a 3% buyer broker with them and they're a first-time home buyer going, and they cannot pay a commission, that would be important to know for them to see if they were going to pay it. So can we ask the seller's agent, is there a buyer commission being paid? And if they can text that to us somehow in writing, what would be the correct way to do that?
Yes, either one. You can call them, you can have them text. The text is not going to be a guaranteed of compensation, so we'll need to have something else that locks them into actually paying that. I mean, you could call them and they say, yeah, we're offering 3%. You get nothing signed. And then at the settlement table, they go, yeah, I'm not paying you that. We got nothing in writing. So yes, you can communicate it. If you're the listing agent and you've talked with your seller, they're willing to offer it, and an agent calls you up and asks you, is there compensation? You can answer that question. You can text that to them. The only thing that you can't do is you can't put it on the MLS. And people are trying to want to put it in their remarks as far as buyer's compensation, sellers willing to work with buyer's agents. Anything referencing the commission portion on the MLS, they're going to shut that down. They're trying to get completely away from any information on the MLS regarding buyer's compensation. But yes, Chris, you can call them and you should communicate it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, section 2.2, authorized compensation. Okay, we got through there. Brokerage fees are fully negotiable. So this is now part of the rule that we have to put this in our contracts. Buyer fees are fully negotiable and are not set by law, any board or association of realtors, multiple listing service, or any manner other than between the company and the seller. That was the whole reason for this lawsuit in the first place. They felt like there was no negotiating there. They felt like the seller was obligated to pay it. That's why we're in this scenario right now. So obviously they're going to put it in bold. They're going to put it on the contract. They're going to want to make sure everybody knows that it's all negotiable. Section 2.3 is what we've got. It's newer here. Compensation between the company and the buyer's brokerage. In the event that the company agrees in writing a written compensation agreement to pay a buyer's broker, the seller agrees that the payment amount will be added to the brokerage fee referenced in section 2.1. The company may not agree to a written compensation agreement that exceeds the authorized amount in 2.2. Okay, so this is where these two numbers start to link up. So in our contract, the first number, the top number, was always the total we received. So let's say we were taking a 6% listing. I was offering 3. It used to be 6 on the top and then 3 on the bottom. In this contract, it's the selling commission is in 2.1 and what's being offered as compensation is in 2.2. So if you're going to take 3% for yourself, the first number up here is going to be 3. And the number down here is what they're going to offer to the buyer's agent. So let's say they're going to offer them 2%. This would be a 3 here, and this would be a 2 here, where this is a change from our contract, because our contract, we would have put 5 on the top, and then we would have offered 2 on the bottom, giving us a total of 3 for the selling side and 2 here. So this is an addition to, it adds it to this amount up here. So you don't need to put 5 or 6 here and then do 2 or 3 here. If you did that, then what this contract would be saying is you're taking a 7 or 8% listing contract, which, hey, if you can get a 7 or 8% listing contract, then sign it, do it. And so that's the biggest change that we have to see here is which numbers go in there. So the biggest thing with 2.2 is when you're taking a listing, the conversation leading up to what this is more important than the number you authorize up front, because this is saying that we as a brokerage can pay this amount out to a brokerage. But we also, I'm going to show you 2 ways to get paid. One of them is directly going to the seller and not going through the listing broker at all. So if you take a listing and let's say they say, well, I don't know what I'm going to offer the buyer's agent. I don't really want to put an offer out there right yet. Or they say something like, we'll offer them 3% in concession. If they want to use the concession for closing costs, great. If they want to use the 3% for the agent, great. Whatever they want to do, but we're only going to do 3. These numbers on the bottom here in 2.2 would be 0. There wouldn't be nothing there. That doesn't mean that they can't offer that in the contract. It just means the listing brokerage is not offering any compensation to the other agent. And so that's one of the questions, Chris, if you call them and they say, we're not offering any compensation to any buyer's agent, that doesn't mean you can't still get paid by the seller. Just means that the listing brokerage is not going to be paying you. So we'd, in that particular case, instead of saying, okay, well, I'm not going to show this property, I'm not going to get paid, my buyers can't afford to pay the commission anyway, instead of not seeing the property, you would write an offer with that in the property. So I'm going to show you those two things right now. If I can find my stop sharing button, it disappeared. Oh, it's over here. Okay, I'm going to share. The first one is the, actually, let's go to this. This is the brokerage. Okay, so if I am as a listing agent that I am offering a commission to another buyer, okay, my seller has given me permission to put a number in that second 2.2. They've given me permission to do that. This is the form that's going to be replacing the escrow instructions that we currently have. Some of us have been using the escrow instructions for lots of different reasons, but the only real reason to use escrow instructions is when you're changing the buyer agent compensation, because it's being dealt with from the listing brokerage and the selling brokerage, the buyer's brokerage. That's the connection between the two, is the escrow instructions. So if you're dealing with the brokerages themselves, you're now dealing with escrow instructions, which this right here is what's going to replace the escrow instructions, real estate brokerage compensation agreement. So this contract is between listing brokerage, buyer's brokerage. That's what it's between. So if they call up and you call up somebody who's listing a property, or they call you because you're listing a property and you are offering compensation, this is the form that guarantees you're going to get paid. So if they say, yes, as a brokerage, we're going to pay you 3%. You're going to come in and you're going to fill this out. And you're going to put the compensation right here, gross acquisition of the price. This is what you're going to sign. Their brokerage, the listing brokerage needs to sign it, and the buyer's brokerage needs to sign it. Biggest key here to save Russ and I a whole lot of time: signatures of authorized buyer's agent or broker. So you can sign this as well as us. So you can make sure that does. And then we have to make sure everybody who is involved in the transaction is aware of it. This is just an acknowledgement of receipt by the buyer and the seller in this particular situation, so that they know you're getting compensated. Buyers shouldn't have any problem signing this, because this is telling them that the seller's agent's brokerage is paying the commission and they don't have to. So that shouldn't be a problem. And the seller shouldn't have a problem signing it, because they already agreed that they were going to pay the listing brokerage anyway. So this is the form that you would fill out to get paid if the agent says, as a company, we are paying you. Now, if they come back and say, we're not offering compensation from the company is not paying a commission, that's where I said, don't take your buyers away. There's another option that we will use, and it's called the real estate brokerage payment addendum. Okay, the payment addendum, as you can see, it's an addendum to the real estate purchase contract. So this is actually going into your REPC when your buyers are putting in an offer. So it's referenced as the same as a normal REPC, but the only difference is section 1. This is the exact same as what we've been using up to about right here. Seller agrees to pay blank dollars or % of the purchase price to the buyer's brokerage. This payment shall be made in addition to any other compensation agreed to by seller's brokerage to buyer's brokerage if applicable. Okay, so let's run through a scenario really quick. On the listing, they authorize to give you 2%. Okay, you have a buyer broker of 3%. The listing brokerage is offering you the 2%. So you need to do the real estate brokerage compensation agreement with the brokerage for the 2%. And if you want the other 1%, then you're going to do 1% here in this section to get the remaining amount so you can have the 3%. So in that scenario, you actually have to do both commission agreements to make that work if they're offering the commission through the brokerage. Easier way to do it is bypass the brokerage completely and put it all in the contract right here, is what I would say would be the easiest. The thing that they've added to this one isn't new. This is what you guys should be using for the last couple of years. But it says the escrow closing office is authorized and directed to withhold this payment from seller's proceeds at closing. The provision of this section 1 of this addendum shall survive closing. So basically this is giving title the permission to hold back the seller's proceeds to pay you this compensation. They've been doing that anyway, but now it's in the contract. They're trying to clear that up so there isn't any confusion. So that's the two ways you're going to get paid.
Jason, can I ask one other question on this? Can you not even say they're not willing to pay with the sellers aren't willing to pay? Can you increase the closing what you're asking them in concessions? And can that go towards your commission?
Okay, so you're saying on your offer, you're going to, let's say that you normally would take 5,000 in concessions, you're going to ask for 15,000 in concessions and want to pay the commission from that. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, or say they are willing to pay, like had the scenario 1.5 buyer agent commission, but they aren't willing to have the seller pay that in that other addendum. Can you increase the closing costs? I mean, it's just a different way to look at it, but can any closing costs go towards commission if it's all complete, if all the other things have been, like all the other prepaids, everything else that you can play with, concessions have been paid?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Russ, you got an opinion on that one?
So I've never been able to get a clear answer on that, Chris, if you can or you can't do that. So I feel like you should be able to, but nobody's ever been able to give me a clear answer on if that you can or you can't. I think probably what it boils down to is how it is worded on the addendum when you're asking them to pay the closing costs. Probably if you said,
I was wondering in the FHA addendum, I mean, it goes through all those different things that are listed there. So I'm wondering if that is a way to be able to get around. I don't know if get it around is the right term, but to be able to pay the extra commission when you really want your buyers to be able to succeed with the offer.
Yeah. So I would just say, really, I think probably even if you did do that, you would want to then go back and clarify it, because I feel like the fact that we have this brokerage payment addendum, the expectation is that you would use that instead of asking for closing costs.
Okay, thanks.
The actual number doesn't really change, and so that's why I hesitate with just putting in the closing costs, because it's basically, it almost feels like you're trying to sneak it in there versus just telling the seller what exactly it's doing. Because if you put it in the seller's payment for the commissions and the concessions, the numbers should be the exact same. If you're asking for, extra concessions versus a little more commission on it, I would put this in there. Now, the one advantage, there's the REPSI has got a change coming up that's now, it's already passed the forms committee and it's now in, I don't know if it's the governor's office or the attorney general's office for signatures. One of the top guys, they have to sign off on it. But if they agree to it, this section right here, this seller's payment to Briar Brokerage, is actually going to go into the REPSI as a checkbox that you don't have to add as an addendum moving forward. So it's going to be part of the contract. So I would say, Chris, try to keep those two things separate. It also, Russ and I were talking to an appraiser the other day, and they treat concessions very differently than they do commission. And if we put our commissions as a concession, a lot of appraisers are just subtracting those concessions completely out of the contract, which would mean, let's say that normal concession would be, $5,000 or $8,000, and then all of a sudden now we have a $30,000 concession. It's going to really mess up our appraisals, and you're going to see a ton of properties come in under value because they're removing that amount from the concessions. So I think those are things that we're kind of just needing to watch. But right now, these are the two forms to make sure you get paid.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so those are, that's what I've got to cover today. Any questions or concerns? Reminder that on these forms come out on Sunday, the 4th, and then on Wednesday, the 14th, Russ and I will be doing the base camp at 11 o'clock here. And we're gonna go through all the forms. We're gonna go through how to fill those forms out. We're also gonna do some role playing and how to communicate to sellers and how to communicate to buyers some of these changes. Really, when you understand it, it's nothing to be really worried about. It's a small adjustment in what we've been doing. I think people are making this out to be bigger than it really needs to be. So on the 14th at 11 o'clock, we'll also have it on Zoom. So if you can make it, come and learn that. Otherwise, that's what we got. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I hope I'm gonna be able to say this right because I've been trying to think of how to do it. Okay. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers.
Your connection's going out.
Military.
And we can't hear you, Tracy.
It didn't come out all right.
So
Yeah, I'm not getting anything.
You're gonna have to
You wanna
call
put
us
it
or
in
type
the-
in the chat box.
Put it in the chat box and we can try to answer it. Yeah. Sorry, Tracy. It's not coming through. And now she's gone. Oh no, there she is. All right. Any other questions while we wait for Tracy? to
so
put-
muted from your side.
There you go. Now I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Yeah, Russ was frozen and then you guys, okay, good. Okay, I hope that I put this right. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers and military. They don't always have money to pay the buyer's agent, right? But if they're getting, let's say, a $400,000 house and they're going to use Utah Housing, which basically gives them 100%. Usually everything, the appraisal has to cover everything that's in that contract. And now it would really be like 400 plus the commission that would, if they can't pay and the seller says they're not gonna pay. Does that make sense? So now they just don't buy that home?
Well, ultimately, if there is if the seller's not willing to do it, currently the commissions are built into that $400,000
Right.
price. So it's having that conversation with the listing agent that in order for your client to buy the property, there is an obligation, and they, I mean, if they bring the price up and it doesn't appraise, you still can't buy it either. So there
Right.
is these unknown factors as far as the appraisal side of trying to bring in higher purchase price to cover some of these expenses. But in reality, these expenses have already been in there. They've already, every property, I guess most properties have already had a compensation built into whatever the value is. So it shouldn't be unrealistic for the seller to have a purchase price of 400,000 and still be able to offer concession. Now they have a choice. They don't have to offer that concession. And if that's the case and your client can't do it, then they're not going to be able to buy that property. However,
Right. Okay.
VA has come out with, well, actually they just said that the buyers can pay for that. So hopefully they can work out some of these lender questions as we move through it. Maybe at some point they'll be able to finance them into their loan, not reflecting the appraisal and the cost. But those are ideas that are being pushed out right now. I think we're gonna have to see how that pans out. But ultimately, if there's not concessions or not commission to be paid, then
Right.
you're gonna have to go buy another property. Yes.
Okay.
Which, as
Well, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, as an FYI, on that, with VA now being able to, they can pay, which means they also can pay the $295 part of the brokerage fee as well, just as an FYI. So that is something that the company won't be waiving anymore, just because it's a VA, because they now can pay it. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that will help. I have 2 listings literally tomorrow. So it sounds like I really just need to push them both a couple days till the new.
No, you can use our current listing agreement. I've already got our listing agreement that's on .loop. Does not mention any compensation on the MLS. So for the time being, you could, I would say, go ahead and still list it. Use our listing agreement we currently have on .loop. You won't have to make any changes other than having that client decide what they're going to do with the commission, if they're going to offer a buyer agent.
Okay. So if we put it up on the MLS Monday or Tuesday or whatever, because then we just don't put the BAC on the MLS now, or put it on, then take it off.
Well, so for St. George, yours is going to be coming on. They will remove it. So go ahead and put it on. But on same St. George and UtahRealEstate.com will just remove it for you. St. George's will be removed on the 8th, and the Wasatch Front will end up being on the 14th.
Do you know about Iron or not?
I don't know that I've heard on Iron County. I'm guessing they will do the same as St. George, but I don't know that.
Okay. I'm on all 3, so it's getting a little confusing. So,
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, those are removed. And then just as a reminder, Park City removed theirs last week. So if you're writing an offer in Park City or taking a listing in Park City, you need to get one of these 2 forms signed if you want to get paid. So there is no offer of compensation in the Park City MLS right at the moment or anymore. So,
Well, I wish they were in Park City, but anyway, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions before we jump off? Okay, have a wonderful weekend, and reach out if you have any questions.